This is Jenny Kunkel, and in this video we are going to cover some script basics in SQL Server. And to begin with, we are going to be opening a new query window for the Northwinds database. We have a plan to save this file. We can open it up and rerun it at any point in time. And one of the things that we need to do that in order to run it without having any errors is to designate which database it's actually going to run against. We can do that using the use statement, and we basically specify use and then whatever the database that we want to run against. In our case, this is going to be Northwinds. And then after that, for our script, our whole entire purpose is to go out and figure out how many employees are reporting to the head person in the company. And if we look at this, we have an employee ID and the reports to, and there is a recursive relationship between the reports to and the employee ID. And for our reports to, the person that is the head of the company has a null value. So we want to find every employee that works for the person that has the null value. In order to do that, we want to get a count of the employees, and this is going to lead us to declare a variable that we can go ahead and store a value in that is from a query, and we are going to refer to this as a scalar variable that we are going to declare and set, and this is going to be declare @ sign. So every variable that we use is going to begin with an @ sign to indicate that it's a variable, and we're going to define it any user-defined name you want. In this case, we're going to do something a little bit meaningful and say employee count, and then we need to define the type, and this is going to be an integer. We're not using any table reference. If we were trying to select something and it was part of a table reference, then we would refer to the type and the length per se of that field. And we'll look at that in just a little bit when we go to try to get the name of that top employee. But for our first little pass, we're just going to go ahead and get our employee count, and then we're going to print that out. We have a select statement that we need to create to get this employee count out, and we want to set the result of that query into our employee count. And we can do that using a set statement. Using our employee count, we're going to set this equal to select count, and this is going to be from our dbo.employees table, where the reports to is going to be equal to a subselect because we need to get that employee number for that head employee, and this is going to be select employee ID from dbo.employees, where the reports to is null. Now if we execute that, the value is going to be stored in our employee count variable, and then we can go ahead and print that out. And we are going to print out a little bit of text with this. So this is going to be printing out the number of employees reporting to the head person is, and then the value from the employee count is what we want to print out. But unfortunately, we have essentially a string or a varchar that's something that we need to concatenate our integer to, and in order to do that, we need to convert our integer to be some type of a varchar. So we can use the convert or the cast. We'll do the convert first. So this is going to be convert. We specify the type that we want to convert it to. This is going to be varchar, and then this is going to be our variable, which is our employee count. If we select everything here, assuming we didn't make any errors, we should be able to run this, and it's going to give us the number of employees reporting to the head person is 5. We can also comment out the convert we want to use the cast, and the cast is the other option where we can cast the employee count as varchar. If we go ahead and select this and rerun the query, we can see that we still have the number of employees reporting to the head person is 5. Now at this point, we want to make this message just a little bit more specific. We want to get the name of that head person. We want to get their title. And if we're already getting those pieces of information, we might as well get the employee ID as well and simplify this query where we're using a subselect, since we already can get this data, and therefore we can make this query a little bit more performant. In this case, we're going to go ahead and declare a few more variables to hold the information that we select, and this is going to be declare at top emp ID, so the employee ID at the top of our organization chart. And if we look at the employee ID, this is going to be integer for our type. And so we are going to use integer for the type for this top emp ID. We're also going to declare the at employee name. And if we look at this, we have last name in varchar 20. We have first name in varchar 10. We want to put a space in between the first and the last name. And to accommodate the largest value that we can hold, that's going to be 31. So we're going to define this as n varchar 31. And finally, we have our title, and this is in varchar 30. So we're going to declare a variable title and set its type as n varchar 30. Now that we have all of our variables defined, we can go ahead and do our select statement. And because we need to select multiple values, we're going to actually use a select statement. And for each field, we're going to essentially assign the variable within the select statement. And it's pretty much going to go like this. So if we come in here and do our select, our first variable that we want to assign the column from the database is going to be our at top emp ID. And we're going to assign to our top emp ID variable the value we select from the database, which is going to be the employee ID. So that employee ID from that DBO employees table is going to be assigned to the at top emp ID variable. Then if we go to the next line, we are going to select the combination of our first name, space, and last name into our employee name. So we start with our variable definition and then put in our equal sign and then our combination of fields that we're using here, which is the first name, followed by the plus sign and a space, and then the plus sign and then the last name. So concatenating that to get the full name. And finally, we are adding our title variable and setting it equal to the value retrieved from the title field in the database. Our select statement is going to be from the dbo.employees. And this is going to be where the reports to is null. When we execute this query, one of the things that might happen is if somebody goes in and messes with the database, we may not have somebody in the database that has a reports to value of null. We always want to be able to program to make sure that we're accommodating every possible condition that could be returned. And in this case, we need to use a conditional statement to handle the fact that we may not get a value back. Only if we get a value back from the database for our top emp ID do we actually want to go ahead and do our select for that employee count and then print out the message concerning that number of people reporting to that top person. So we're going to use a conditional to do this, and we are going to use an if statement with our @ top emp ID. And we are going to check to see if that field is not null, because only if it's not null do we actually want to execute something. Now, because we have more than one statement in our if condition that we want to execute as a result, we need to be able to put this into a block. And with a block in SQL, unlike other programming languages where we might use curly braces, we have to use a begin and end. Now with SQL Server Management Studio, I can highlight the actual statements that I want to put in my begin end block, and I can do a right click and I have a surround with. So this is a snippet that is available, and I can go ahead and select the begin, and that's going to go ahead and put my text within a begin and end block. So it's going to surround that. You might have seen that it also has an if statement that you can use as well. But in this case, I like to go ahead and indent my text. So I'm going to go ahead and indent my statements here. I also want to get rid of some of the extra space that I put in just to streamline the code so I can put more code in here. And if I am not successful in getting an employee ID back, I also want to print out some type of a message in my else clause. And maybe in this case, I want to actually indent this so my if and else stand out. Then I can go ahead and just print something because I don't have multiple statements that I want to execute. So in this case, I'm just going to print, there is no head person. At that point, we have a message coming out in both cases, but the message that we have here is not specific. We want to modify this, but before we do that, we want to simplify our select statement. We have the top employee, so instead of doing that sub-select, we can go ahead and just plug in our variable top emp ID. Now we have our query simplified, and we can go ahead and update the message here, and this is going to be the number of employees reporting to. We don't need the head person any longer, so we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to put in a single quote with a plus sign, and then we're going to add the employee name plus. Then we're going to put in a single quote with an open parenthesis, probably put a space before that. Then we're going to go and add a plus sign. Let's go to the next line. And in this case, we're going to add the title plus, and then put in a single quote and the ending parenthesis in a space. And that should pretty much take care of formatting this. We should see the number of employees reporting to the person's name, what their title is, and then that number. So let's go ahead and select everything, and at this point execute it, and we should see the number of employees reporting to Andrew Fuller, Vice President Sales, is 5. We've gone through, we've done a use statement, we've taken a look at using the declaration of variables, assigning variables within a select statement, doing conditional statements, using a scalar variable assignment here, and printing out values from our table. So this is going to be our basic walkthrough for SQL Server.